I was listening to the story about, it was a story of a family in Washington, and the little boy called the Bigfoot the Cowboy Man. And he had, apparently it had made an effort to steal this kid. And it hit me. My children were in that playpen behind me with nothing but a mosquito net over them. It could have crept up behind me and taken both of my children, and I wouldn't have known.
Father just got like a Mustang or something from Wyoming, okay? He had it out in the corral because he couldn't put it in the barn in the stalls with the other horses. It would kick and made all the other horses nervous. Had a Seminole Indian working the horse trying to break it every day. So they had it out in the corral. This skunk ape snuck up behind this horse and grabbed it on its hind quarters. This particular horse kicks out, jumps over the corral, runs into the pasture, to get away. At this point, the rancher's out there just blasted away with the 30-30. Skunk ape runs into the swamp.
I went up there one day after that, or 2 days after that. I went up there and sat in the silence up there, and I'm telling you, man, it was free. It was crazy. There was a crazy vibe up there still. I did what I could to kind of get things under control, but I told her, I said, you need to get off this property. I feel like no matter how strong you are, it's almost like standing in the ocean. You can't stand still without moving your feet. You're going to get knocked over eventually, no matter how strong, whatever. You can't withstand a barrage of weird spiritual energy.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Paranormal Odyssey. Got another short story for you guys. Actually, this one is pretty long, actually, so I decided to break it down into at least 2 parts. Maybe 3, but I'm trying to do it in 2. Before we get started on it, if you would hit that subscribe button, I would appreciate it. If you've had an encounter, like to come on and share it with me, love to talk to you about that. Shoot me an email to Wayne at paranormalworldproductions.com. All right, as I said, this one is quite lengthy, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Today, going to be talking about Lavinia Fisher, the ghost of Lavinia Fisher. In 1886, an unexpected and deadly earthquake took Charleston, South Carolina by surprise. There had been no prior warnings or indications of tremors, and the area at the time was not known to have any earthquakes. So when the ground shook beneath the 50,000 residents of Charleston, many were caught off guard. The devastation left 60 dead and caused millions of dollars in damage to the buildings in the city, including the Charleston County Jail. If you believe the legends, the damage at the jail let loose the spirit of one of the most infamous residents in Charleston's history, Lavinia Fisher. Often touted as not just Charleston's, but America's first female serial killer, her spirit was now free to wander the neighborhood around the jail looking for more victims. But was Lavinia Fisher truly America's first female serial killer? Or was her story twisted and transformed decades after her death? The 6 Mile Wayfarer House. From her birth in 1793 until 1819, not much is known of Lavinia's life. In between those years, she married a man named John Fisher, and together they ran a hotel 6 miles outside of the city of Charleston in South Carolina. Appropriately, the hotel was called the 6 Mile Wayfarer House. Despite being 6 miles away from town, the couple were well known and popular among the residents of Charleston, which helped bring in travelers to the hotel by referrals. Lavinia was said to be beautiful, charming, and sociable. Often along with John would join travelers for dinner at the hotel, entertaining them as the night came to a close. It was possibly due to their popularity that when reports of missing travelers started to spread, no one suspected John and Lavinia Fisher to be the ones behind it, at least not at first. In February 1819, with more reports of missing and possibly dead travelers, several residents of Charleston figured out that many of the missing were last seen entering the 6 Mile Wayfarer house. A mob formed and traveled to the hotel confronting the Fishers, but finding no evidence of wrongdoing. They decided to head back to the city, leaving behind one man, David Ross, to watch over the hotel just in case. The following morning, while watching the hotel, David was attacked by a group of men who severely beat him. Through his bloody eyes, he saw Lavinia Fisher approach him and reached out to her for help. Unfortunately for David, Lavinia was not there to offer assistance. She grabbed David, choked him, and finally put his head through a window. Still alive, David was somehow able to escape the group and rush back to Charleston, where he reported the attack. The authorities at Charleston were not easily swayed into believing his story. The Fishers to them were upstanding, popular business owners and would not throw it all away to attack a watchman. 2 days later, they would be proven wrong. The day after David's attack, a man named John Peoples, traveling from Georgia, stopped at the 6 Mile Wayfarer house, hoping for a warm meal and a place to rest. Lavinia gracefully welcomed him into the hotel, offering a warm meal, but to his dismay, she didn't have any rooms available. As usual, the Fishers joined their guest for dinner, asking him all sorts of questions, eventually becoming more and more personal. After some time, Lavinia left to brew some tea, and when she returned, she told John Peoples of the good news. A room had suddenly opened up. She then gave him a cup of tea, and they continued to talk. Unbeknownst to her, Peoples disliked tea and poured it out while she wasn't looking. Believing he had finished, Lavinia brought him up to his room and bid him good night, but by now Peoples had grown suspicious of the personal questions and the sudden open room. After she left, Peoples chose to spend the night sitting on a chair watching the door instead of laying on the bed. Hours later, he finally dozed off, but jumped up terrified when he heard a loud bang in his room. Seeing the door was still closed, he looked around, finding his bed had fallen through a trap door and into a pit. Realizing the entire thing was a trap, Peoples escaped through a window and rode his horse into Charleston to alert the police. Now, with both accounts from those who escaped the 6 Mile Wayfarer house, police made their way to the hotel and arrested the Fishers along with two of their accomplices. They then conducted a search that revealed the true horrors of the hotel. According to their investigation, they put together the Fishers would invite travelers to the hotel, joining them for meals, making them feel safe and welcomed. At some point, Lavinia would prepare them a cup of tea, but include a bit of the poisonous oleander plant. She would use enough to make the victim dizzy and confused, and then show them to their rooms, where they would immediately lay down for bed. Later in the night, John Fisher would trigger a trap door under the bed, dumping their victim into a hidden room in the basement, where they would be robbed and beaten to death. The police found items belonging to dozens of the missing travelers, and then they found the bodies. Over 100 bodies were found. Many were just bones, telling the authorities the Fishers had been murdering travelers for years. The Fishers and their accomplices were charged with murder, placed in the 4-story Charleston County Jail, and sentenced to hang. Lavinia Fisher, believing the governor wouldn't hang a woman, appealed the decision, but when she was denied, the Fishers made a plan to escape. On September 13th, 1819, the Fishers, who were in the same cell, made a rope out of bed sheets and began their escape. John Fisher was the first to go down the rope, making it safely to the ground, but the rope broke before Lavinia could attempt to join him. Though he wouldn't go far, as the commotion they caused meant his capture was swift. The two were then placed under much tighter security to await their execution date on February 18th, 1820. By the time that date rolled around, John Fisher had met with the minister multiple times and repented for his sins, but Lavinia refused outright every time. At the gallows, a crowd of 2,000 residents had congregated, wanting to witness the monsters of Charleston hang for their crimes. Lavinia requested to be hanged in her wedding dress, but after changing into the dress, refused to walk to the gallows. The crowd watched as John Fisher walked to his noose with his minister by his side, and watched as Lavinia was dragged in her wedding dress, kicking and screaming curses at the crowd. John was executed swiftly, but as the noose went around Lavinia's neck, she screamed out to the crowd, "If you have a message you want to send to hell, give it to me. I'll carry it." Lavinia then jumped off the scaffolding with the noose around her neck and died, staring out into the crowd. Those who watched her life slip away would later say she died with a wicked stare imprinted on her face. Lavinia Fisher was 27 years old. Almost immediately after her death, many reported seeing glimpses of Lavinia staring outside from her cell at the Charleston County Jail, trapped in the room where she had spent the last year of her life. In 1886, the 1886 earthquake caused the collapse of the 4th floor of the county jail, and afterward many reported this had released Lavinia's spirit, allowing her to wander the streets. Although many said her spirit was out looking for victims, this would imply the stories of her murderous tendencies were accurate, but it turns out there's not much truth in these tales. That is it for part 1. I'm going to record part 2 here shortly, and I will have it out the following night. All right, what do you guys think of that one? Have y'all ever heard of Lavinia Fisher? I hadn't. I have not read the part 2 all the way, so I'll be finding out when you guys, I guess, the conclusion of the story. But like I said, that'll be out tomorrow night or the night after this one is aired. All right, guys, if you have anything to add, if there are any comments you can leave here, down below in the comment section. But if there's anything you want to suggest or recommend to me, I'd love to hear from you. You can send that to Wayne at ParanormalWorldProductions.com. Want to invite everyone, please go check out ParanormalWorldProductions.com website. Brian put together over there, did a great job on it. Check out the other shows, Sasquatch Odyssey, True Crime Odyssey, as well as this one, Paranormal Odyssey. Also remind everybody about TikTok and Instagram. Please go follow us over there. Also about Paranormal Odyssey Live, which can be found right where you're at now every Friday night at 7:30 Eastern. Hit that subscribe button, please. Also, the podcast, still releasing 2 episodes weekly, every Wednesday and Sunday. So anywhere you get your podcast, you can find that. Guys, if you would, please go rate and review the show. I've asked several times, but that's something I want to keep pounding away. You guys, please, please, please go rate and review the show. Would greatly, greatly appreciate it. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. That's it for this one. Y'all stay tuned for part 2 coming up shortly. Guys, be good to each other, be good to yourselves, and I will see you next time.